I used to believe that parental sacrifice was a badge of honor, until the day my son pointed me toward the guest bathroom in the home I had helped him buy. It happened during what should have been a pleasant weekend visit to Michael's house in Portland, Oregon. I make these visits every other month, driving the 3 hours from Seattle where I've lived since the divorce. The modest 2-story colonial with its fresh gray siding and black shutters felt welcoming from the outside, but something had shifted inside those walls that I couldn't quite place. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I pulled into the circular driveway that Friday afternoon, noticing the freshly trimmed hedges and new outdoor lighting. Fixtures. For 5 years, I had transferred money monthly to help with the mortgage payments after Michael and his wife Elise had their twins. It was what parents do. You help when your children struggle, especially with something as fundamental as housing. Even on my teacher's pension, I managed to find a way. "Dad!" Michael called out, appearing at the front door as I pulled my weekend bag from the trunk. He looked good, healthy, his dark hair neatly styled, wearing an expensive-looking button-down that I didn't recognize. At 42, my son had settled comfortably into middle age, though I could still see traces of the earnest boy who once built paper airplanes at my kitchen table. "The drive wasn't too bad, was it?" he asked, taking my bag despite my protests. "Clear all the way," I replied, following him into the house. The entryway had been remodeled since my last visit, new hardwood floors replacing the carpet I'd helped them install when they first bought the place. Everything looked more polished, more expensive. Elise appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Robert, welcome." She leaned in for the customary hug, the scent of her perfume, something floral and probably costly, lingering in the air between us. "We've got you set up in the guest room upstairs. I hope that works?" "Perfect," I said, though I typically stayed in the downstairs office that had a pull-out couch. It was closer to the main bathroom, easier on my knees that had started to protest. In the mornings. But I didn't mention it. Adaptability had become my middle name in recent years. "The twins are at soccer practice," Michael explained. "Jennifer's picking them up. They'll be back for dinner." Jennifer was their nanny, or family assistant, as Elise preferred to call her, another new development from the past year. When the twins were born, Elise had insisted on staying home with them, something she could only do because I helped with their mortgage. Now, at 8 years old, the twins had a nanny while Elise pursued what she called her wellness coaching practice. "You'll have to tell me more about work," I said to Michael as we climbed the stairs. His IT consulting business had apparently taken off, according to our brief phone conversations. "Sounds like things are going well." "Better than well," he said, his voice carrying a hint of pride I hadn't heard before. "We've expanded into 3 new markets this year. The Seattle contract alone doubled our revenue." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I nodded, genuinely happy for his success. This was what I had wanted for him: stability, growth, the ability to provide for his family without worry. What I hadn't expected was the growing distance I felt with each visit, as if his success was slowly erasing the memory of the struggles that had preceded it. He pushed open the door to the guest room, a space I had rarely entered before. It was beautifully decorated with a queen bed, matching nightstands, and a small writing desk by the window that overlooked the backyard. "The bathroom is just down the hall," Michael said, setting my bag on the luggage rack. "We've set out fresh. Towels for you?" "I usually use the one downstairs," I mentioned casually. "It's easier with these knees." Michael's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Oh, we're renovating that one starting Monday, so we've moved everything out. The contractor is coming first thing." He cleared his throat. "Besides, Elise is pretty particular about the main bathroom now." She just had it redesigned with some special imported tiles. I caught the implication immediately. The main bathroom on the first floor was off limits. The bathroom I had used on every previous visit. The bathroom where I had once spent an entire Saturday installing a new vanity because they couldn't afford a plumber. The guest bath is nicer anyway, he added quickly. New rainfall showerhead? I smiled and nodded, swallowing the small hurt that rose in my throat. Sounds luxurious. Dinner's at 6, he said, checking his watch, a sleek timepiece that looked far more expensive than anything I'd ever owned. Take your time settling in. After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed, running my hand over the crisp duvet. The room was lovely, but felt staged somehow, like a hotel suite. Impersonal despite its comfort. I unpacked slowly, placing my neatly folded clothes in the empty dresser drawers, arranging my toiletries in the small travel kit I'd brought. I walked down the hallway to inspect the guest bathroom. It was spotless, with fluffy white towels and decorative soaps shaped like seashells arranged in a glass dish. Nothing like the practical, lived-in bathroom downstairs where I had once bathed the twins in the oversized tub, while Michael and Elise enjoyed a rare dinner out. My phone buzzed with a text from my daughter, Laura. Made it to Dad's. Call later? Laura always checked in when I visited her brother. She lived in Chicago with her husband and 3 children, too far for regular visits, but we spoke weekly. She worried about me being alone since her mother passed away 6 years ago. All good. We'll call tomorrow, I replied, not wanting to mention the bathroom situation or the strange feeling of displacement settling over me. I freshened up and made my way downstairs, following the sound of voices to the kitchen. The space had been completely transformed since my last visit 3 months ago. The functional oak cabinets had been replaced with sleek white ones, and a massive island now dominated the center of the room, topped with what appeared to be marble. What do you think? Elise asked, gesturing proudly around the space. We just finished the remodel last month. I searched for the right word. Impressive. And it was a showpiece kitchen that belonged in a magazine, not the warm, slightly cluttered space where I had once helped the twins with their homework while Michael and I talked about his business challenges over beers. Dad, wine? Michael held up a bottle, already pouring a glass for Elise. Sure, I said, though I typically preferred beer. Another small accommodation. I leaned against the island, careful not to leave fingerprints on its pristine surface. So, renovating the downstairs bathroom too? Michael and Elise exchanged a quick glance that didn't escape my notice. Yes, finally, Elise said. The plumbing is so outdated, and I've been wanting to get rid of that old tub for ages. The tub where I'd bathed their children. The tub I had reglazed myself to save them the expense when they first moved in. We're taking it down to the studs, Michael added. Going for a more modern look. I nodded, sipping my wine. And the business is doing that well? That's wonderful. Another quick glance between them. We've been blessed, Elise said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Michael's work ethic is finally paying off. His work ethic. I thought about the nights I'd stayed up with him on the phone when he was just starting out, talking through business plans, offering encouragement when clients fell through. I thought about the startup loan I'd given him from my retirement fund, money he had eventually paid back, but which had allowed him to take the risk in the first place. Dad was just asking about the bathroom renovation, Michael said to Elise, changing the subject. I told him the contractor starts Monday. Oh yes, she replied, adjusting a flower arrangement on the counter. It's going to be chaos, so you're lucky you're missing it. We're putting in one of those zero-entry showers and heated floors. Sounds fancy, I commented. We thought about waiting until after your visit, Michael said, not meeting my eyes. But the contractor's schedule was tight, and we've been waiting 3 months to get on his calendar. It's no problem, I assured him, though I was certain no contractor had been scheduled. The downstairs bathroom had become their main bathroom, Elise's bathroom, and I was being gently redirected to the guest facilities upstairs. The front door opened with a burst of energy as the twins rushed in, followed by Jennifer, their nanny, carrying their sports equipment. "Grandpa!" they shouted in unison, dropping their bags in the entryway and racing toward me. These moments made everything worthwhile, their uninhibited affection, the genuine joy in their eyes. "Look how tall you've both gotten," I marveled, hugging them tightly. "I think you've grown a foot since I saw you last." "Only an inch," corrected Emma, the more literal of the two. "Mom measured us on the growth chart. And I'm taller," added Jack with the competitive edge that reminded me so much of Michael at that age. "By half a centimeter," Emma protested. "Still taller," Jack insisted. "Kids, wash up for dinner," Elise intervened. "Jennifer, you're welcome to stay if you'd like." "Thanks, Mrs. Harmon, but my boyfriend's waiting. See you Monday morning, usual time." Jennifer waved and headed out, leaving behind the scent of youth and energy. During dinner, an elaborate meal of herb-crusted salmon and roasted vegetables that Elise had catered rather than cooked, the twins dominated the conversation with stories of school and soccer. I listened attentively, asking questions, soaking in the details of their lives that I missed living 3 hours away. "Grandpa, can you come to my science fair next month?" Jack asked suddenly. "I'm building a model of the solar system, and Dad said you know all about space stuff." I glanced at Michael, surprised that he had mentioned my amateur astronomy hobby to his son. "I'd love to, buddy. When is it?" "May 15th, he replied eagerly. "It's a Thursday afternoon." "I'll put it on my calendar," I promised, touched by the invitation. "And my dance recital is the Saturday after," Emma added quickly, not to be outdone. "I'm playing a moonbeam." "Wouldn't miss it," I assured her, making a mental note to block off that entire week for a visit. After dinner, while the twins were getting ready for bed, I offered to help clean up. The kitchen had already been mostly restored to its pristine state by Elise, who moved with the efficiency of someone accustomed to maintaining perfection. "So," I said casually to Michael as we loaded the dishwasher, "the business really took off, huh?" He nodded, arranging wine glasses on the top rack. "It's been a good year. We landed the Miller account. You remember, the one I was worried about last fall? That opened some doors." "I'm proud of you," I said sincerely. "You've built something substantial." "Thanks, Dad." He hesitated, then added, "We've actually been meaning to talk to you about something." My heart quickened slightly. In my experience, those words rarely preceded good news. "What's up?" I kept my tone light. "Well," he began, lowering his voice though Elise was upstairs with the twins. "Now that the business is doing so well, we wanted to—" He paused, searching for words. "We wanted to adjust our arrangement." I knew immediately what he meant, but waited for him to continue. "The monthly transfers you've been making for the mortgage," he clarified. "We're in a position now where we don't need that assistance anymore." I nodded slowly, feeling an unexpected mix of emotions, pride in his independence, but also a strange sense of loss. Those monthly transfers had been a tangible connection, a way of remaining essential in my son's life. "That's great news," I said, meaning it despite the complexity of my feelings. "I'm glad things are going so well." "We really appreciate everything you've done," he continued, sounding rehearsed. "We wouldn't have made it through those first few years without your help." "That's what parents do," I replied simply. "You needed help, I could provide it." He smiled, relief evident in his expression. Elise wanted to have a whole formal dinner to discuss it, but I told her we could just talk. "No formal dinner needed," I assured him. "I'm just happy you're thriving." Later that night, after the tea, twins had extracted multiple bedtime stories from me and finally fallen asleep. I retreated to the guest room. I sat at the small desk by the window, looking out at the darkened backyard where a wooden play structure stood silhouetted against the night sky. I had helped build that structure 4 summers ago, spending a sweaty weekend with Michael assembling it piece by piece, while Elise brought us lemonade, and the twins watched with mounting excitement. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura. "How's the visit going?" I hesitated, unsure how to distill the day's subtle revelations into a text message. "Good to see everyone. The house has been completely renovated. Barely recognized it." Her response came quickly. "Moving up in the world, huh? How's it feel?" An insightful question from my perceptive daughter. "Different," I replied after a moment. "They don't need my help with the mortgage anymore." "That's good, right?" she texted back. "Finally off the hook." "Right," I sent, though it didn't feel quite like liberation. I prepared for bed, following the unfamiliar ritual of using the guest bathroom down the hall. The rainfall showerhead was indeed luxurious, but as I stood under its gentle spray, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being washed away from my son's life. Gradually, politely, but persistently. The next morning, I woke early as usual. The house was quiet, the digital clock on the nightstand showing 6:17 a.m. I dressed in comfortable clothes, planning to offer to make breakfast as I always did during my visits. The twins loved my blueberry pancakes, a tradition that dated back to when Michael was a child. I made my way carefully down the stairs, mindful of the creaking step third from the bottom that might wake the household. The kitchen was bathed in early morning light, spotless and waiting. I located the coffee maker, new and complicated looking, and after some investigation managed to brew a pot. Cup in hand, I wandered to the living room. Like the rest of the house, it had been transformed. The comfortable, slightly worn furniture had been replaced with a sleek sectional and glass coffee table. The walls, once covered with family photos in mismatched frames, now displayed abstract artwork in coordinated colors. I paused at the single remaining family photo, a professional portrait of Michael, Elise, and the twins taken last Christmas. They were posed in matching outfits against a woodland backdrop, looking polished and perfect. A beautiful family. My family, yet somehow distant in their perfection. My eyes drifted to the built-in bookshelves flanking the fireplace. Among the decorative objects and hardcover books that looked untouched, I spotted something familiar. A small bronze baseball trophy. Michael's first, from when he was 10 years old. I remembered the pride on his face that day, how he had insisted on sleeping with the trophy next to his bed for a week afterward. I picked it up, feeling its familiar weight in my hand. This small token of the past had survived the renovation, though it had been relegated to a shelf among objects chosen for their aesthetic value rather than their meaning. "Dad? You're up early." I turned to find Michael in the doorway, hair tousled. From sleep, wearing expensive-looking lounge pants and a t-shirt. "Old habits," I said, replacing the trophy carefully. "Made some coffee if you want." "Thanks." He yawned, moving toward the kitchen. I followed. "I was thinking I could make pancakes for the kids," I offered. "If you have blueberries?" "Oh," he looked slightly uncomfortable. "Elise has them on this new breakfast routine. Protein smoothies and something with chia seeds. She's pretty strict about it." Another tradition gently set aside. "No problem," I said easily. "Just a thought." He poured himself coffee, adding almond milk from the refrigerator. "We're taking the kids to the Children's Museum today. They have a new dinosaur exhibit Jack's been dying to see. You're welcome to join us, or if you'd prefer a quiet day." He was offering me an out, I realized. "The museum sounds great," I said firmly. "I'd love to see this dinosaur exhibit." "Great," he nodded, looking slightly relieved. "We'll leave around 10. The day passed pleasantly enough. The Children's Museum was a hit with the twins, who raced from exhibit to exhibit with boundless energy. I followed more slowly, watching as Michael and Elise documented the experience with countless photos on their phones, creating the digital memory while sometimes missing the moment itself. During lunch at an upscale cafe near the museum, Elise casually mentioned their summer plans. We're thinking of renting a place in the San Juan Islands for 2 weeks in August. The Jensen family, Emma's friend Lily's parents, did it last year and loved it. Sounds wonderful, I commented. The islands are beautiful in late summer. You should come for a few days, Michael offered, though his tone suggested an afterthought rather than a genuine invitation. Maybe, I said noncommittally. My schedule's pretty open. That evening, after another catered meal and games with the twins, I found myself alone with Michael in the backyard. The spring air was crisp, but not uncomfortable as we sat on the new patio furniture, each nursing a beer, the one concession to my preferences. The yard looks good, I observed. The once simple lawn had been landscaped with flowering shrubs and a stone path leading to the play structure. Professional service, Michael admitted. Comes every 2 weeks. I don't have the time anymore, and Elise doesn't have the interest. I remembered teaching him how to mow the lawn when he was 12, the careful rows we had created together in our modest backyard. Another memory that seemed to hold no currency in his new life. Dad, he said after a comfortable silence, I've been meaning to ask you something. Shoot. Are you doing okay? Financially, I mean. The question surprised me. I'm fine. The pension's adequate, and I've always been careful with money. You know that. He nodded, looking relieved. Good. That's good. Because now that we're doing better, if you ever needed help. The role reversal was so sudden it nearly gave me whiplash. From benefactor to potential charity case in the space of a day. I appreciate that, I said carefully. But I'm doing just fine. I just worry sometimes, he continued, not quite meeting my eyes. Living alone in that house, it's a lot of maintenance for one person. I manage, I said simply, thinking of the home I had shared with his mother, the home where I had raised him and Laura. It was older, certainly, and required regular attention, but it was mine, paid off years ago, familiar in all its creaks and quirks. Well, the offer stands, he said, raising his beer bottle slightly. It's the least we could do after all you've done for us. I nodded, taking a long swallow of my beer to avoid responding immediately. The casual, least we could do stung more than I wanted to admit. 5 years of financial support during their early struggles with the mortgage, reduced to an offhand acknowledgement over beers. The next morning was Sunday, my last day of the visit. I woke with a strange sense of resolution, though nothing had been decided or discussed beyond the end of the mortgage payments. I showered in the guest bathroom, packed my few belongings neatly in my weekend bag, and made the bed with hospital corners, a habit from my youth that had never left me. Downstairs, the scene was one of controlled chaos as the twins ate breakfast and argued over whose turn it was to feed Orlando, their elderly goldfish. Elise was dressed for her Sunday yoga class, car keys already in hand. Robert, help yourself to anything in the kitchen, she said, kissing the twins quickly. I should be back by 11 and then we can all have lunch before you head out. Take your time, I assured her, pouring myself coffee. After she left, Michael looked up from his phone where he'd been scrolling through emails. Dad, would you mind keeping an eye on the kids? I need to make a few work calls. Of course, I replied, secretly pleased to have uninterrupted time with my grandchildren. Once Michael disappeared into his home office, I turned to the twins. So what shall we do this morning? Can we build a fort? Jack asked immediately. In the guest room, Emma specified. It has the best space between the bed and the wall. I hesitated, thinking of the pristine guest room I had just carefully tidied. How about in the backyard instead? It's a beautiful day. This compromise was deemed acceptable, and soon we were dragging chairs and blankets onto the lawn, creating an elaborate structure that expanded with each new architectural inspiration. The twins directed the construction with the seriousness of miniature engineers, while I served as both labor and structural consultant. Grandpa, Emma said as we sat, inside our completed fort, Why don't you live closer to us? Yeah, Jack agreed. Then you could come to all my soccer games. I have my house in Seattle, I explained, where your dad grew up. But you could get a new house here, Emma suggested with a child's simple logic. Maybe someday, I said, not wanting to make promises I might not keep. But I come visit as often as I can. Not enough, Jack declared. Dad says you're too far away when we need a babysitter. I raised an eyebrow at this unfiltered insight into my son's perspective. Is that what he says? Jack nodded, oblivious to the weight of his disclosure. When Jennifer can't come and they have important things. I see, I said, filing this information away. Well, I'm here now. What game shall we play in our magnificent fort? By the time Elise returned from yoga, looking refreshed in expensive athletic wear, the fort had evolved into a complex society with its own currency system, rocks of varying sizes, and laws. No stepping on the blue blanket without permission. What's all this? She asked, surveying the chaos on her previously manicured lawn. Fort Awesome, Jack informed her proudly. Grandpa helped. I can see that, she said with a tight smile. Lunch will be ready in 20 minutes. Could you all clean this up before then? The twins groaned but began the dismantling process under my supervision. As we folded blankets and returned chairs to their proper places, I caught sight of Michael watching us from the kitchen window, phone still, pressed to his ear. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between amusement and concern. Perhaps for his lawn, perhaps for something deeper. Lunch was another catered affair, gourmet sandwiches and a quinoa salad that the twins picked at unenthusiastically. The conversation flowed around safe topics. The twins' upcoming school events, Michael's golf game, Elise's new wellness clients. As the meal wound down, I glanced at my watch. I should probably hit the road soon if I want to beat the Sunday. Traffic. So soon? Emma protested, though I had stayed exactly as long as planned. I'll be back for the science fair and dance recital, I promised. Mark your calendars. While I retrieved my bag from upstairs, Michael followed me to the guest room. Thanks for coming, Dad. It means a lot to the kids. And to me, I replied, zipping my toiletry kit closed. They're growing up so fast. He nodded, leaning against the doorframe. Listen, about what we discussed, the mortgage payments. I just want to make sure you know how grateful we are. We couldn't have made it without your help, especially in those early years. I know, I said, meeting his eyes directly. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. He looked away first, glancing around the guest room as if seeing it for the first time. Next visit, we'll have the downstairs bathroom finished. It'll be more convenient for you. I smiled, recognizing the small peace offering. The guest bath was fine. That rainfall showerhead is something else. At the front door, the twins clung to me with fierce hugs, extracting multiple promises about my return for their upcoming events. Elise offered a polite embrace and a reminder to drive safely. Michael walked me to my car, helping me stow my bag in the trunk. Text when you get home, he said, a parental reversal that wasn't lost on me. Will do, I promised, getting into the driver's seat. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw them framed in the doorway, Michael with his arm around Elise, the twins waving enthusiastically. A beautiful family in front of a beautiful house, a picture of success and stability. I waved back, feeling both proud and strangely hollow. The 3-hour drive home would give me plenty of time to process the subtle shifts in our relationship, to come to terms with my new role in my son's life. No longer the financial safety net, no longer the downstairs bathroom user, but something different, something still taking shape between us. As I turned onto the main road, my phone buzzed with a text from Laura. On your way home? Call me later. Just leaving now, I replied at the next stoplight. Lots to tell you. I drove north toward Seattle, toward the home where I had raised my children, the home that was now just mine. The guest bathroom experience had revealed more than just new boundaries in my son's house. It had exposed the fragile nature of gratitude, the way that past sacrifices can be reframed or forgotten as circumstances change. Yet as I merged onto the highway, I felt a surprising sense of freedom alongside the hurt. The monthly mortgage transfers had been both a connection and a tether. Now that link was severed, leaving me to redefine my relationship with my son and his family on new terms. Terms that would require more than financial transactions to maintain. The road stretched ahead, carrying me back to my life while my thoughts remained entangled in the life I had just left behind. The guest bathroom, with its fluffy towels and decorative soaps, had been more than just a redirection. It had been a symbol of how easily a parent can be repositioned from central to peripheral in a child's world. But perhaps it had also been a necessary step, for both Michael and me, toward finding our footing on new and unfamiliar ground. The drive back to Seattle gave me time to think. I followed the familiar curves of I-5 North with mechanical precision while my mind replayed every interaction from the weekend visit. Rain began to fall as I crossed the Washington state line, a fitting backdrop to my thoughts. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the afternoon light was fading, casting long shadows across the modest ranch-style home where I'd lived for over 30 years. I sat in the car for a moment, looking at the house. The paint was chipping near the eaves, the garden beds needed weeding, and the mailbox leaned slightly to one side. All projects on my perpetual to-do list. Unlike Michael's meticulously maintained property, mine showed its age and the absence of a second pair of hands since Margaret passed away. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Home safe? At least he had remembered to check in. Just arrived. All good, I replied, gathering my bag and making my way to the front door. Inside, the house welcomed me with familiar silence. No catered meals or expensive renovations here, just comfortable. Furniture worn in all the right places, walls covered with family photos in mismatched frames, and bookshelves filled with well-read paperbacks. I dropped my bag in the hallway and headed straight for the kitchen to put on a pot of coffee, a ritual that helped me transition between activities. As the coffee brewed, I opened my laptop on the kitchen table and saw an email notification blinking. Laura. Trying to arrange our weekly video call. I responded suggesting 8 o'clock, giving me time to unpack and gather my thoughts. The bathroom situation shouldn't have bothered me as much as it did. It was a small thing, really. People renovate their homes all the time. But it wasn't just about the bathroom. It was about what it represented. The way Elise's eyes had slid away when Michael mentioned the renovation, the careful redirecting to the guest facilities upstairs, the polite but unmistakable message, "This space is no longer for you." My phone rang just as I was pouring my coffee. Laura's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, Dad," she said when I answered. "Made it home okay?" "Safe and sound," I confirmed. "Thought we were talking at 8? Shifted bedtime earlier for the kids," she explained. "School night. So tell me about the visit. How's my big brother doing with his fancy house and fancy job?" I settled into my armchair, coffee mug balanced on the worn armrest. "They're doing well. Business is booming. The house has been completely redone since you last saw it. And how was it seeing everyone?" Laura always cut to the emotional core of things, a trait she inherited from her mother. "The twins are growing so fast," I said, smiling despite myself. "Emma's doing dance now, and Jack's into science. Both invited me to their events next month." "That's great," Laura said. "And Michael and Elise? How was it with them?" I hesitated, unsure how to articulate the subtle shift I'd felt throughout the weekend. "Good. Fine. They're busy. Michael told me they don't need help with the mortgage anymore." "Well, that's good news, right? You've been sending them money. For what, 5 years now?" "Almost 6, I corrected. "And yes, It's good that they're financially stable now. But? Laura prompted, hearing the unspoken reservation in my voice. But nothing. I'm proud of him. He's built a successful business, has a beautiful family. That's what every parent wants for their child. Dad, Laura's voice softened. It's okay if you have mixed feelings about it. I sighed, recognizing the futility of trying to hide my emotions from my perceptive daughter. It's just different. Now, the whole visit felt like I was a guest rather than family. They had me use the upstairs bathroom because Elise is particular about the main one, the one I helped renovate when they first moved in. Seriously? Laura's indignation was immediate. After everything you did for them? It's not a big deal. I backpedaled, already regretting bringing it up. People get set in their ways. No, Dad, it is a big deal. You helped them when they couldn't make their mortgage payments. You were there every step of the way. And now that they're doing well, they're treating you like some distant relative who needs to stick to the guest areas. That's not right. Her articulation of my unspoken hurt was so accurate it made my chest tighten. They're entitled to run their household however they want. Being entitled doesn't mean being ungrateful, Laura countered. Remember when Craig and I were struggling after Aiden was born? You and Mom helped us too. We've never forgotten that. It was true. When Laura and her husband had faced their own financial challenges after their first child, Margaret and I had stepped in. But the circumstances had been different. A temporary loan during Craig's medical leave, repaid within a year. Not the sustained monthly support I'd provided to Michael and Elise. That was different, I said. How? Laura challenged. Because we acknowledged the help? Because we treated you with respect afterward? Laura, I cautioned, uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. Your brother is doing his best. They both are. His best would include showing some gratitude, she muttered, and maybe letting you use the bathroom downstairs. I changed the subject, asking about my grandchildren in Chicago, and Laura allowed the pivot. For the next half hour, we talked about her family, her work as a physical therapist, and her plans to visit Seattle in the summer. By the time we hung up, the sting of the weekend had dulled somewhat, though Laura's indignation had validated my feelings in a way I hadn't expected. That night, I slept poorly, waking several times to the sound of the old house settling. Around 4 a.m, I gave up on sleep altogether and made my way to the kitchen for an early coffee. As I waited for the pot to brew, I found myself calculating how much I had contributed to Michael and Elise's mortgage over the years. The key. Monthly transfers had started at $1,200, increased to $1,500 when property taxes went up, and continued at that level for nearly 6 years. A quick mental calculation put the total at around $108,000, not including the additional money I'd spent on home improvements, emergency repairs, and gifts for the twins. It wasn't the money itself that bothered me. I had given it freely, without expectation of repayment. What gnawed at me was the apparent ease with which that substantial contribution had been set aside in their narrative, reduced to, "We appreciate everything you've done," while I was directed away from the bathroom I had once helped renovate. Monday morning arrived with a slate-gray sky and the promise of more rain. I went through my usual routine: coffee, breakfast, a quick scan of the news on my tablet. Retirement had its rhythms, different from the decades I'd spent teaching high school history, but structured nonetheless. Mondays meant volunteer work, at the local library, sorting donations and helping with the children's reading program. As I prepared to leave, my phone chimed with a text from Michael. "Thanks for coming this weekend. Kids already asking when you're coming back." I smiled, despite myself. Whatever complicated feelings I had about my son and daughter-in-law, the twins' affection was genuine and uncomplicated. "Loved seeing everyone," I replied. "Tell them I'm already looking forward to the science fair and dance recital. The library." Work kept me occupied for most of the day. There was something soothing about organizing books, helping eager young readers find their next adventure, and chatting with the other volunteers, mostly retirees like myself, making use of our abundance of time and knowledge. I mentioned nothing about the weekend visit or the bathroom situation, instead listening to Martha's stories about her new grandchild and Bob's complaints about his back problems. When I returned home that afternoon, I was surprised to find another email from Michael waiting in my inbox, unusual for him on a workday. "Dad," it began, "been thinking about our conversation this weekend. Now that we're in a better place financially, we'd like to start repaying you for all the help with the mortgage. Attached is a proposed repayment plan. Let me know your thoughts." Michael. I opened the attachment with a sense of disbelief. It was a spreadsheet outlining a 5-year repayment plan for $75,000, a significant amount, but considerably less than what I had actually contributed. The first payment would begin next month at $1,050, effectively reversing our financial relationship. I stared at the screen, unsure how to feel. On one hand, the gesture acknowledged the financial support I had provided and offered repayment, something I had never requested or expected. On the other hand, the undervaluation of my contribution felt like another subtle erasure of the true extent of my help during their difficult years. My finger hovered over the reply button, but I decided to wait. This required careful thought, not an impulsive response driven by hurt or confusion. I closed the laptop and decided to take a walk, despite the drizzling rain. The neighborhoods around my house were quiet on weekday afternoons. I walked slowly, nodding to the occasional neighbor out walking a dog or retrieving mail. The gentle exercise cleared my head somewhat, allowing me to consider Michael's offer more objectively. What did I actually want from my son? Not money. I had given the financial support with no expectation of return. Appreciation? Certainly, though not in the form of a spreadsheet with calculated monthly payments. Recognition? Perhaps that was closer to the truth. Acknowledgement not just of the financial help, but of the relationship that had prompted it. The permanent bond that shouldn't be relegated to guest status. When I returned home, I found another email waiting, this one from Elise. The sight of her name in my inbox was unusual enough to raise my eyebrows. She rarely communicated with me directly, leaving such matters to Michael. "Robert," the message read, "I hope you had a safe drive home. I wanted to reach out about the bathroom situation this weekend. I realize now that directing you to use the guest bathroom may have seemed unwelcoming. Please know that wasn't my intention. We've been planning the renovation for months, and I was perhaps overly protective of the space knowing it would soon be dismantled. I hope you'll accept my apology and know that you're always welcome in our home. Guest bathroom renovation or not. Warm regards, Elise." I read the email twice, surprised by both its content and its timing. Had Michael told her about our mortgage conversation? Had she sensed my discomfort despite my efforts to hide it? Or had my son recognized the inappropriateness of the situation himself and prompted this outreach? Whatever the catalyst, the apology seemed genuine, if somewhat carefully worded. No mention of the financial support that had made their home possible, in the first place, but an acknowledgement at least of the bathroom misstep. I composed a reply. "Elise, thank you for your note. No apology necessary. I understand wanting to protect a space before renovation. I'm just happy to have spent time with all of you, especially the twins. Looking forward to seeing you all again soon. Best, Robert." Polite, concise, revealing nothing of my lingering hurt. The response of a proper guest rather than a father who had helped make the mortgage payments on that house for nearly 6 years. After sending the reply, I turned my attention to Michael's repayment offer. This required more careful consideration. After an hour of drafting and deleting various responses, I finally settled on, "Michael, I appreciate the thought behind the repayment plan, but that's not necessary. The support I provided was given freely, as any parent would do if they could. I never expected repayment and don't need it now. If you're determined to do something, consider setting up a college fund for the twins instead. That would be a better use of the money and would make me happy. Love, Dad. I hit send before I could overthink it further, then closed my laptop and turned on the evening news, letting the familiar voices of the anchors wash over me as I considered what had just transpired. My phone rang just after 7. Michael's name appeared on the screen, an unexpected development. He rarely called on weeknights, typically waiting for our scheduled Sunday check-ins. "Dad," he said when I answered, his voice tight with emotion. "I got your email." "Good," I said simply, unsure where this was headed. "I don't think you understand," he continued. "We want to repay you. It's important to us. To me." "I understand." "Perfectly," I replied, keeping my tone even. "And I'm telling you it's not necessary. You needed help. I could provide it. End of story." "It's not that simple," Michael insisted. "Look, Dad, now that the business is doing well, we've been talking with our financial advisor about getting our affairs in order. The money we owe you shows up as a significant liability." The word liability hit me like a physical blow. So, this wasn't about gratitude or recognition. It was about cleaning up their balance sheet. "The money you owe me," I repeated slowly. "I never considered it a loan, Michael. I never asked for repayment." "I know, but—" He hesitated. "Dad, you have to understand. We're trying to refinance the house to take advantage of the lower interest rates. Your payments complicate things." "My payments?" I echoed, feeling increasingly like we were speaking different languages. "The ones that kept the bank from foreclosing when you missed 3 mortgage payments in a row back in 2019? Those payments?" A silence stretched between us. I rarely referenced that particular crisis, the frantic late-night call from a panicking Michael, the emergency transfer I'd made the next morning, the subsequent arrangement that had turned into years of monthly support. "Yes," he finally said, his voice quieter. "Those payments. Dad, I'm not ungrateful. We wouldn't have the house without your help. That's exactly why I want to make this right." "There's nothing to make right," I insisted. "Parents help their children when they can. I was fortunate enough to be in a position to help. The only thing I ever wanted in return was to be treated like family, not a guest who needs to use the upstairs bathroom." The words escaped before I could censor them, laying bare the hurt I had tried to conceal. Another silence, this one heavier than the last. "Is that what this is about?" Michael finally asked. "The bathroom?" "No," I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "It's not about the bathroom itself. It's about what it represented. I spent years helping make that house a home for your family, Michael. I didn't expect a medal, but I also didn't expect to be treated like a visitor passing through." "Dad, you're not a visitor," he protested. "You're family. You know that." "Do I?" I challenged gently. Because this weekend felt different, and not just because of the bathroom. Everything felt curated, controlled, like I was being kept at a careful distance from your real life. "That's not fair," Michael's voice took on a defensive edge. "We were just trying to make things nice for your visit. Elise spent hours planning meals and making sure everything was perfect. I don't need perfect, son. I just need real." I took a deep breath, trying to articulate feelings I was still processing myself. "The house I visited this weekend didn't feel like the home I helped you build. It felt like a showcase where I was welcome to admire but not really participate." "You're being oversensitive," Michael said, a note of frustration creeping into his voice. "It was just a normal weekend visit." "Maybe I am being sensitive," I conceded. "But when you've been asked to use the guest bathroom in a house you helped pay for, it tends to bring up some feelings. I told you, we're starting renovations." "Michael," I interrupted gently, "we both know there's no renovation scheduled. Not right now. The silence on the other end of the line confirmed what I already knew. Look, I continued, softening my tone. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm truly proud of the life you've built. I just want to feel like I still have a place in it, one that acknowledges our history rather than politely steps around it. Of course you have a place, Michael said quietly. You're my father. Then let's leave the money out of it, I suggested. No repayment plan, no liability on your balance sheet, just a father who helped when he could, and a son who accepts that. Help as the gift it was intended to be. But if you really want to do something, then set up those college funds for the twins like I suggested. Pay it forward instead of back. I could almost hear him thinking, weighing financial considerations against emotional ones. All right, he finally agreed. I'll talk to our advisor about the college funds instead. Good, I said, feeling a knot of tension release in my chest. And Michael? Next time I visit, I'd appreciate using the bathroom downstairs. Renovations or not, these old knees don't do well with stairs first thing in the morning. A small chuckle escaped him. Deal. No more guest bathroom for you. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet living room, replaying the conversation. Nothing had been fully resolved. The hurt of being redirected to the guest bathroom remained, as did the larger issue of how my role in my son's life was shifting now that financial support was no longer needed. But at least we had begun to name the unspoken tensions, to acknowledge that the relationship needed tending beyond spreadsheets and financial arrangements. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura. How are you doing tonight? Better, I replied. Truthfully. Had a good talk with your brother. Miracle of miracles, came her quick response. About the bathroom situation? Among other things, it's a start. Good. Remember what Mom always said, families are works in progress. I smiled. At the reference. Margaret had indeed said that often, especially during the turbulent teenage years when both our children had tested boundaries and patience alike. Works in progress, never finished, never perfect, always evolving. As I prepared for bed that night, I passed the main bathroom of my own home, the one with the grab bar I had installed after my knee surgery, the adjustable shower head that accommodated my height, the medicine cabinet still containing some of Margaret's items I couldn't bring myself to discard. A bathroom designed for the actual people who used it, not for show or status. I thought about Michael and Elise's gleaming house with its marble countertops and imported tiles, its carefully curated spaces and designated guest areas. I wondered if they truly felt at home there, or if they too sometimes felt like visitors in a showcase. Perhaps that was part of why directing me to the guest bathroom had felt natural to them. They were, in some ways, still guests themselves in the perfect life they were constructing. The next morning, I woke to an email notification. Michael had sent a photo taken during the weekend visit, the twins and me in the backyard fort we had built together. Our faces were alight with laughter, the cheerful chaos of blankets and chairs forming a perfect backdrop to the genuine joy of the moment. Thought you might want this, his message read. The kids haven't stopped talking about Fort Awesome with Grandpa. Same time next month for the science fair and recital. I studied the photo, noting the unguarded happiness on my grandchildren's faces, the same expression I had seen on Michael's face when he was their age. Despite the complications of our adult relationship, despite the bathroom situation and its ripple effects, this connection remained true and vital. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, saving the photo to my phone. Fort Awesome 2.0 will be even better. His response came quickly. Looking forward to it. Oh, and Dad? I talked to Elise about the downstairs bathroom. No renovation scheduled for your next visit. Promise. It was a small victory in the larger negotiation of our evolving relationship, but it felt significant nonetheless. Not because I particularly cared which bathroom I used, but because the acknowledgement represented something more important, recognition that my place in their home shouldn't be an afterthought. that the history of my contribution to their lives deserved respect rather than revision. As I prepared for my volunteer shift at the library, I felt lighter than I had since returning from Portland. The bathroom situation had revealed uncomfortable truths about gratitude, memory, and the shifting dynamics between parent and adult child. But it had also opened a door to more honest communication, to naming the subtle hurts that might otherwise have festered in silence. The guest bathroom had, ironically, led us back toward the authentic relationship I had feared was slipping away. One where I was neither benefactor nor guest, but simply a father still learning how to parent an adult son who no longer needed financial rescue, but might still need other forms of support I was uniquely positioned to provide. 2 weeks passed quietly. April drifted toward May, bringing the first real warmth of spring to Seattle. I fell back into my retirement routine, volunteer work at the library on Mondays and Wednesdays, coffee with fellow retired teachers on Thursdays, occasional fishing, trips with my neighbor Dave. The bathroom incident gradually took its place among the complicated mosaic of family relationships, not forgotten, but no longer occupying the foreground of my thoughts. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, my phone rang. While I was halfway through the newspaper crossword, Michael's name flashed on the screen. "Dad?" His voice sounded strained. "Do you have a minute?" "Of course," I replied, setting down my pen. "Everything okay?" "Not really." He exhaled heavily. "The business has hit a rough patch. We lost the Miller account last week." The Miller account, the prestigious contract he had mentioned with such pride during my visit. The catalyst for their financial turnaround. "What happened?" I asked. "Their CFO changed and the new guy brought in his own team." Michael's voice was tight with frustration. "Just like that, 30% of our revenue, gone." "I'm sorry, son," I said, genuinely concerned. "That's a serious blow." "Yeah." Another heavy exhale. "And the timing couldn't be worse. We just committed to that kitchen renovation, and Elise already ordered some custom cabinets that can't be returned." A pause. "I'm not calling to ask for money," he added hastily. "I just needed to tell someone who would understand." The clarification stung slightly, though I appreciated his desire to avoid any impression that this was a financial appeal. "Of course I understand. Business has ups and downs. You'll weather this." "I know," he said, though he didn't sound convinced. "Anyway, I should go. Conference call in 10 minutes. "Michael," I said before he could hang up, "these things happen. You've built something solid. One lost client doesn't change that." "Thanks, Dad," he replied, his voice softening slightly. "I'll keep you posted." After we hung up, I sat with my half-finished crossword thinking. The loss of a major account was certainly a setback, but probably not catastrophic for a well-established business. Michael hadn't asked for financial help, had specifically stated he wasn't calling for that reason, and yet, I couldn't help wondering if our recent conversation about the mortgage payments had made him reluctant to seek assistance, even temporarily. Had my reaction to the bathroom situation created a new barrier between us, one that prevented him from asking for help when he genuinely needed it? The thought troubled me throughout the day. By evening, I had made a decision. I drafted an email to Michael. "Son, I've been thinking about your call this morning. I know you didn't ask for this, but I'd like to transfer $5,000 to help with the kitchen renovation costs while you regroup from losing the Miller account. No strings attached, no expectations of repayment. Just a father helping his son during a challenging time. Let me know if that would be useful. Love, Dad." I hovered over the send button, second-guessing myself. Would the offer be perceived as overstepping? As failing to respect Michael's new financial independence? Or worse, as a response to his implicit request, despite his insistence that he wasn't asking for money? In the end, I deleted the draft without sending it. Michael was an adult, running his own business and household. If he needed financial assistance, he would ask, and my door would remain open. but offering unsolicited help might undermine the very independence I had taken pride in his achieving. Instead, I sent a simple text. Thinking about you today. You've overcome bigger challenges. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. His response came back quickly. Thanks, Dad. I appreciate that. 3 days later, I received an unexpected call from Elise. In all the years they had been married, I could count on one hand the number of times she had called me directly. Robert? Her voice had a forced cheerfulness. How are you? I'm well. Thank you, I replied, curious about the purpose of her call. How are things with you all? Oh, busy as usual, she said with a light laugh that didn't quite ring true. Listen, I'm calling because we've been thinking about the twins. Birthday next month? They'll be 9. Can you believe it? Growing too fast, I agreed. They've been asking if you could come down for their party. It's on the 15th, a Saturday afternoon. Nothing fancy, just cake and presents in the backyard with a few friends from school. She paused. It would mean a lot to them. Of course I'll be there, I said without hesitation. I wouldn't miss it. Wonderful. Elise's relief was audible. And, we were wondering if you might be willing to arrive a day or two early. The twins have been asking to build another fort with you, and she hesitated. Michael mentioned you might be able to help with a small project around the house. Something about fixing the deck railing? The request was subtly wrapped in the children's desire to see me, but I understood immediately what was happening. With the loss of the Miller account, expensive contractors were out of the question. My handyman skills, previously overshadowed by their financial success, were suddenly valuable again. I'd be happy to come early and look at the railing, I said, keeping any hint of satisfaction from my voice. I'll drive down Thursday morning if that works. Perfect, Elise said, sounding genuinely relieved now. We'll have the downstairs bedroom ready for you. Not the guest room upstairs, I noted. With some irony, the downstairs bedroom with easy access to the main bathroom. My bathroom privileges apparently restored along with my usefulness. Sounds good, I replied simply. Looking forward to seeing everyone. After the call ended, I found myself smiling, despite the complexity of emotions it had stirred. There was a certain poetic justice in the situation. The father who had been relegated to guest status suddenly welcomed back into the functional heart of the home when practical skills were needed, but beneath that wry amusement lay a deeper satisfaction. Not schadenfreude at Michael's business setback, but pleasure in being needed again, in having something valuable to contribute beyond my checkbook. I had built my life around being useful, as a teacher, as a husband, as a father. Feeling unnecessary had been the sharpest sting of my recent visit. The next morning, I made a quick trip to the hardware store, filling my cart with the supplies I'd likely need for deck repairs: pressure-treated lumber, galvanized screws, a new box of exterior, wood screws, waterproof wood glue. I added a package of colorful rope lights on impulse, thinking they might enhance the next fort-building experience with the twins. In the checkout line, I ran into Frank Miller, a former colleague from my teaching days who had moved into administration before retiring. Robert, he greeted me warmly. Getting ready for some home improvements? Not my home, I explained. Going down to Portland next week to help my son with some repairs. Frank nodded. Always something that needs fixing. My daughters, constantly calling me over to look at this or that. Last week it was a leaking garbage disposal. He grinned. Funny how they stop seeing us as dinosaurs when the plumbing breaks. I laughed, recognizing the truth in his observation. You're not wrong. Nice to be useful again. Amen to that, Frank agreed. They pay professionals hundreds for what we do for the price of a decent meal. We chatted a few minutes more about mutual acquaintances and local news before parting ways with promises to meet for lunch soon. As I loaded my purchases into the car, I reflected on Frank's comment about being useful. Perhaps that was the key to navigating this new phase of parenthood. finding ways to remain relevant in my children's lives that didn't revolve around financial support, but still acknowledged my experience and capabilities. The week passed quickly. I spent my evenings in the garage, cutting lumber to approximate lengths I might need based on Michael's description of the deck. Better to arrive prepared rather than waste time with multiple hardware store runs once I was there. Thursday morning dawned clear and mild, perfect driving weather. I loaded my truck with tools and materials, checking twice to ensure I had everything I might need. The drive to Portland felt different this time, purposeful rather than purely social. I was going, not just as a father or grandfather, but as someone with specific skills needed to solve a problem. I arrived at Michael's house just before noon. The house looked the same as it had 3 weeks earlier, still immaculately maintained from the outside. But as I pulled into the driveway, I noticed the deck railing that ran along the right side of the property. Several balusters were indeed missing, and a section of the top rail sagged visibly where it had separated from a post. Before I could even ring the doorbell, the front door flew open and the twins burst out, running toward me with unrestrained enthusiasm. "Grandpa, you're here!" "Did you bring stuff for Fort Awesome? Can you fix the deck so Mom will let us go out there again?" I laughed, embracing them both. Yes to all of those questions. But let me get my bags inside first, okay? Elise appeared. In the doorway, dressed more casually than I remembered from my last visit, yoga pants and a simple t-shirt rather than the carefully coordinated outfits she typically wore. "Robert, welcome," she said, stepping forward to help with one of my Thank you for coming early. The twins have been counting down the days." "Happy to be here," I replied, following her inside. The house was noticeably less pristine than during my previous visit. Toys were scattered across the living room, mail was piled on the entry table, and a basket of unfolded laundry sat at the foot of the stairs. Not messy by normal standards, but a striking contrast to the showroom perfection I had encountered before. "Sorry about the chaos," Elise said, noticing my gaze. "Jennifer's hours got cut back to 3 days a week, and I've been taking on more clients to make up for—" She trailed off, then smiled brightly. "Well, you know how it goes. Never enough hours in the day." "The house looks lived in," I said gently. "That's a good thing." She gave me a grateful look. "Michael's on a conference call, but he should be done soon. We've set up the downstairs bedroom for you again. I hope that's okay." "Perfect," I said, noting but not commenting on the fact that it was the same room I had previously used for years, before being redirected to the guest room upstairs. "And you'll be happy to know," she added with a slightly forced lightness, "that the main bathroom is all yours. No renovations scheduled." I appreciated the acknowledgement, however awkward. "Thanks, Elise." Once I had deposited my overnight bag in the bedroom, I changed into work clothes and went to examine the deck more closely. The damage was substantial, but not overwhelming. Rotted wood where water had pooled against the siding, loose connections, where the railing met the posts, several missing or broken balusters. A full day's work, but well within my capabilities. I was measuring the width of the deck when Michael emerged from the house, dressed in a button-down shirt and slacks despite working from home, maintaining the appearance of success even as things were challenging. "Dad?" he greeted me, relief evident in his voice. "Thanks for coming early. I know the deck doesn't look great. Nothing that can't be fixed," I assured him, making notes on a small pad. "I brought most of what we'll need. Might have to make one run to the hardware store for a few specific pieces." "Just tell me what you need," Michael said. "I really appreciate this. Contractors around here are either booked solid or charging rates that are—" He hesitated. "Highway robbery," I finished for him with a smile. "Some things never change." He laughed, a genuine sound that eased some of the tension between us. "True enough. Listen, I've got one more call at 2, but after that I'm free to help." "Sounds good. I'll get started on removing the damaged sections." The twins offered to be my assistants. God help us all, Michael said with a grin, but there was affection rather than annoyance in his tone. The afternoon passed pleasantly. The twins proved to be enthusiastic if somewhat chaotic helpers, eager to hand me tools and collect screws in their plastic beach buckets. Michael joined us after his call, rolling up his sleeves and following my instructions with the same focused attention he had shown as a boy learning to build his first birdhouse. As we worked side by side, the awkwardness of my previous visit gradually melted away, replaced by the easy rhythm of a shared task. There was something fundamentally healing about working with our hands together, about solving a tangible problem that had nothing to do with money or status or changing family dynamics. By dinner time, we had removed all the damaged sections and prepared the surfaces for new wood. The real construction would begin tomorrow, but we had made solid progress. As we gathered around the kitchen table for a simple meal of takeout pizza, a far cry from the catered gourmet food of my last visit, the atmosphere was relaxed and genuine in a way it hadn't been for a long time. "Dad's the hero of the day," Michael announced to the twins as he distributed paper plates. "The deck's going to be safe again thanks to Grandpa." "And us," Emma protested. "We helped." "Absolutely," I agreed solemnly. "Couldn't have done it without my expert assistance." "Can we build Fort Awesome after dinner?" Jack asked, already halfway through his first slice of pizza. "It's getting late," Elise began, but I interrupted gently. "How about we start tomorrow? We can use the whole day to make it extra awesome. I even brought special lights." This compromise was deemed acceptable, and dinner continued with the twins describing in escalating detail the features they planned to incorporate into Fort Awesome 2.0, from a working drawbridge to a secret tunnel. After the children were in bed, Michael, Elise, and I sat in the living room with cups of coffee. The formal wine glasses of my previous visit were nowhere to be seen, another small but telling shift. "So," Michael said after a moment of comfortable silence, "business update. We've managed to replace about half of the Miller account revenue with 2 smaller clients. Not ideal, but it's keeping things stable." "That's good progress," I said. "Diversifying can be healthier in the long run anyway." "That's what I keep telling myself." He glanced at Elise, who nodded encouragingly. "We've had to make some adjustments, obviously. Cut back on Jennifer's hours, postponed some of the house projects we had planned. The kitchen renovation is on hold indefinitely," Elise added with a rueful smile. "Those imported backsplash tiles I was so excited about suddenly seem ridiculous." I noticed she was wearing a simple silver chain rather than the elaborate jewelry she had favored during my last visit. The casual clothing, the unfolded laundry, the takeout dinner, all signs of a family recalibrating after a financial setback. "Every business has cycles," I offered. "This won't be the last challenge you face, but you'll adapt. You already are." "We also wanted to talk to you about something else," Michael said, setting down his coffee cup and leaning forward. "The college funds you suggested for the twins." "What about them?" "We've decided to set them up, but we'd like to do it differently than I initially suggested." He glanced at Elise again before continuing. "Instead of us funding them entirely, we'd like it to be a joint effort. We'll make monthly contributions, and if you're willing, you could contribute whatever you feel comfortable with. Not to make up for the mortgage help," he added quickly, "but because you're their grandfather, and I know education matters to you." The proposal surprised me. It wasn't what I had expected, neither a request for renewed financial support nor a complete rejection of my involvement in their financial planning. Instead, it offered a middle path, an acknowledgement that while they were still the primary providers for their children, my contribution remained meaningful and welcome. "I like that idea," I said simply. "Education was always a priority for your mother and me. She'd be pleased to know we're working together on this." A shadow passed over Michael's face at the mention of his mother. Margaret had been gone for 6 years, but her absence still created empty spaces in conversations like these. "She would," he agreed softly. She always said we should collaborate more. 2 investors are better than 1, Elise added practically. And this way, the twins benefit from both their parents and their grandfather planning for their future. Count me in, I said, warmed by the inclusive approach. We can discuss the details tomorrow, but I'm all for it. The conversation shifted to lighter topics after that. Neighborhood news, the twins' latest school adventures, an amusing story about Orlando the goldfish's recent escape attempt when Jack overfilled the tank. We talked easily, without the careful, social scripting I had sensed during my previous visit. Later, as I prepared for bed in the downstairs room that had once again become my room, I reflected on the day's subtle shifts. The financial setback had undoubtedly played a role in changing the dynamic between us, creating a situation where my practical skills were once again valuable. But there was something deeper at work, a mutual recognition that our relationship didn't need to be defined by financial transactions or carefully maintained boundaries, but could evolve into a more balanced partnership where each of us contributed what we could, when we could. I used the main bathroom, my bathroom, without comment, noting that the decorative soaps had been replaced with practical pump dispensers, another small sign of adjusted priorities. As I brushed my teeth, I caught my reflection in the mirror and was surprised to see myself smiling. Not because of my son's business challenges, but because of the unexpected opportunity they had created for us to reconnect on more authentic terms. The next morning, I woke to the sounds of the household stirring. Children's voices from the kitchen, the coffee maker gurgling, Elise on a work call in the living room. I dressed quickly and joined the family breakfast, a chaotic affair of cereal boxes and toast crumbs that bore no resemblance to the orchestrated meal service of my previous visit. "Grandpa," Jack exclaimed when I appeared, "can we start the fort? Today?" "You promised." "After we finish the deck repairs," I reminded him. "Safety first, then fun." "I can help with the deck, too," he insisted. "Me too," Emma added, not to be outdone. "Best construction crew in Portland," I agreed, accepting the mug of coffee Michael handed me with a grateful nod. The day unfolded with a pleasant rhythm of productive work. Michael and I focused on rebuilding the deck railing while the twins alternated between helping and playing elaborate games in the yard. Elise brought us sandwiches at lunchtime, joining us on the partially repaired deck with an ease I hadn't seen in her before. "This looks amazing already," she said, genuinely impressed. "I was worried we'd have to replace the whole thing." "Just needed some targeted repairs," I explained. "The basic structure is still sound." "Unlike our kitchen cabinets," she said with a rueful laugh. "The hinge broke on another one yesterday. I swear they're falling apart in solidarity with our finances." "I can take a look at those too," I offered. "Cabinet hinges are usually a simple fix." "Would you?" Relief flooded her face. "That would be wonderful." The quote we got from the handyman, "Service was ridiculous." "Happy to help," I said, meaning it. There was something deeply satisfying about being asked for assistance that had nothing to do with my checkbook. By mid-afternoon, the deck railing was securely rebuilt, freshly sanded and ready for staining the next day. The twins, who had been monitoring our progress with increasing impatience, immediately began lobbying for the fort-building phase to commence. "You did promise," Michael reminded me with a grin, clearly enjoying not being the target of their persistence for once. "So I did," I agreed, setting aside my tools. Fort Awesome 2.0 construction begins now. What followed was 2 hours of joyful chaos as blankets, chairs, pillows, and cardboard boxes were assembled into an elaborate structure that sprawled across the backyard. I produced the rope lights from my truck to universal acclaim, and Michael unearthed an old camping lantern from the garage that became the fort's central lighting fixture. The completed fort was a marvel of improvised engineering. A blanket, canopy supported by garden stakes and lawn chairs, interior rooms defined by strategically placed couch cushions, and the entire perimeter illuminated by twinkling rope lights. The twins were beside themselves with pride as they conducted guided tours for their parents, pointing out special features like the lookout tower, a stepladder draped with sheets, and the secret escape tunnel, a play tunnel from there earlier. Childhood toys that I had recovered from the garage. "This is seriously impressive," Michael murmured as he crouched beside me inside the main chamber of the fort. "Way better than anything we built when I was a kid." "We didn't have rope lights back then," I reminded him. "Every generation improves." "On the last?" He laughed, but his expression turned thoughtful. "It's good having you here, Dad. Not just for the deck repair or the fort, but it feels right. More like it used to." "It does," I agreed simply. "I've been thinking about our conversation after my last visit," he continued, lowering his voice so the children wouldn't overhear. "About how I'd made you feel like a guest rather than family. That wasn't our intention, but I get it now. We got so caught up in creating this perfect life that we started treating everyone like visitors in it. Even ourselves sometimes." The admission surprised me with its self-awareness. "Life's rarely perfect," I said, "and perfect isn't always better." "The funny thing is," he said, looking around at the makeshift fort with its crooked walls and mismatched blankets, "the twins will remember this fort 100 times longer than they'll remember those imported tiles Elise was so obsessed with." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. The most meaningful family memories rarely involved perfection or expense. They centered on shared experiences, often imperfect ones. "Fort Awesome stands as proof," I said solemnly, then ducked as Emma came crawling through the entrance tunnel. "Grandpa, we need more pillows for the reading nook," she informed me with the authority of a general commanding troops. "Right away, ma'am," I replied with a salute that made her giggle. As I crawled out of the fort in search of additional pillows, I caught sight of Elise standing at the kitchen window, watching us with a smile. When she saw me notice her, she raised her coffee mug in a small toast, an acknowledgement of the joy unfolding in her backyard, joy that had nothing to do with pristine spaces or careful boundaries, and everything to do with the messy, imperfect business of being a family. That evening, after the twins had finally been extracted from Fort Awesome and shepherded to bed, I found myself sitting on the back porch with Michael. The night air carried the earthy scent of the newly stained deck, rails, a project we had completed together. 2 beer bottles rested on the small table between us, a far cry from the carefully selected wines of my previous visit. "The Miller account wasn't the only one we lost," Michael said suddenly, breaking a comfortable silence. "2 smaller clients followed them out the door last month. It's like watching dominoes fall." I turned to study his profile in the dim porch light. The admission clearly cost him something. Pride, perhaps, or the carefully maintained image of success he had cultivated. "That's rough," I said simply, giving him space to continue if he chose. "The thing is," he sighed, taking a pull from his beer, "we expanded too quickly. New office space, more staff, that marketing campaign Elise was so excited about, all based on projected revenue that disappeared overnight." "Business has cycles," I reminded him. "This isn't the first downturn you've weathered." "It's different this time." Michael's voice was quiet but tight with tension. "Before, when things got rough, we had a safety net. You." He glanced at me, briefly, then away. I didn't appreciate it enough then. How that security allowed us to take risks, to make mistakes without everything crumbling. The acknowledgement was as unexpected as it was meaningful. "The safety net is still there," I said carefully. "Different form, maybe, but still there." He shook his head. "I can't keep relying on my father to bail me out. I'm 42 years old. For God's sake." "There's a difference between being bailed out and having family support," I replied. "No one succeeds entirely on their own, Michael. Everyone needs help sometimes." "Maybe." He didn't sound convinced. "But there's a line between help and dependence. I crossed it with the mortgage payments, staying in that pattern for years when we should have adjusted our lifestyle sooner." I considered this self-assessment, appreciating its honesty even as I disagreed with its harshness. You were raising twins, building a business from scratch. Those aren't easy circumstances. Elise wanted everything to be perfect from day one, he said, a note of frustration creeping into his voice. The house, the schools, the right neighborhood. I went along with it because I wanted to give them what I didn't have growing up. I raised an eyebrow at this. You didn't exactly grow up deprived, son. I know, he conceded quickly. That's not what I meant. We had everything we needed, but it was always careful, budgeted, Mom clipping coupons, you tracking every expense, in that little notebook you carried. I remember wanting name-brand sneakers in 8th grade, and you explaining why we couldn't afford them. The memory he referenced was over 30 years old, but I recalled it clearly. Michael's disappointment, my attempt to teach financial responsibility, the compromise we eventually reached where he did extra chores to earn half the cost. That? Careful budgeting put you through college without debt, I pointed out, and gave you seed money to start your business. Exactly, he said, leaning forward. That's what I'm trying to say. You taught us the value of money by being transparent about its limits. But with my kids, he gestured toward the house where the twins were sleeping. We've just given them everything, no questions asked. Designer clothes, private swimming lessons, that ridiculous playhouse Elise ordered from Europe last Christmas. I remembered the elaborate wooden structure that had been delivered and assembled by a specialty team. Miniature Victorian cottage complete with working windows and custom furniture. They've never heard "we can't afford that," Michael continued. Not once in their lives, at least not until last month. How did they take it? I asked, genuinely curious. He gave a short laugh. Better than their mother. Emma asked if this meant we were poor now, and when I explained we just needed to be more careful with money for a while, she shrugged and said, Okay, can we still get ice cream on Fridays? Jack was more concerned about whether we'd have to move. Once I assured him we weren't losing the house, he seemed fine. Kids are often more resilient than we give them credit for, I observed. Elise is having a harder time, Michael admitted. She's been worried about what people will think, whether we'll have to pull back from certain social circles. The first thing she did was cancel her country club membership, before I even had a chance to suggest it. That's a significant gesture, I noted, remembering how Elise had spoken about that membership during my previous visit, mentioning the networking opportunities and social connections it provided. It is, he agreed. She's trying. We both are. But it's a big adjustment. He took another swallow of beer. The truth is, Dad, we got caught up in the lifestyle. The imported bathroom tiles, the catered dinners, the perfect guest room that no one actually used. It all seemed so important. And now? I prompted gently. Now I'm just grateful we can make the mortgage payment without dipping into savings. He gave me a sideways glance, though I suspect you've been checking our payment history online, making sure we're not falling behind. The observation was uncomfortably accurate. I had indeed been monitoring their mortgage account, which was still linked to my banking profile from the years when I had made the payments. Old habits, I admitted. I wanted to be prepared if you needed help. I know. He nodded slowly. And I appreciate it, even if it makes me feel like I'm still 16. He smiled to soften the words. The thing is, this setback has been clarifying. What matters? What doesn't? Who we can count on? And who's just there for the good times, I suggested, reading between the lines. Exactly. He set his empty bottle down with a decisive clink. You know what the first thing Elise noticed was, when we started cutting back? How quickly certain friends stopped calling once we weren't hosting dinner parties or joining them. For weekend getaways at the coast. I nodded, unsurprised. Fair weather friends are a reality of life. Your mother and I learned that lesson when I was laid off from the district back in '98. Michael looked surprised. I don't remember that. We Shielded you kids from most of it, I explained. But yes, I was out of work for almost 5 months. Some of our supposedly closest friends suddenly became too busy to see us. The invitations dried up. But the real friends, the ones who dropped off groceries or had us over for simple meals, those relationships deepened. I had no idea, Michael said quietly. You were 16, focused on basketball, and that girl. What was her name? The one with the braid? Melanie, he supplied automatically, smiling at the memory. So that's why you were home so much that semester. I thought you were just being overprotective. That too, I admitted. But mainly, I was job hunting and doing handyman work to keep us afloat until I found another teaching position. He was silent for a long moment, absorbing this new piece of family history. You never told us. We didn't want you to worry, I said simply. Your mother and I handled it. That's what parents do. Like I've been trying to handle this downturn without worrying you, he observed, the parallel not lost on him. The difference is I'm not 16, I pointed out gently. I don't need shielding from reality. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. I should have been more straightforward about how bad things were getting. And I should have recognized that you might need something besides financial help, I acknowledged. Advice, perspective, the benefit of having weathered similar storms. We fell silent again, the conversation settling between us like a bridge newly reinforced. So, I said after a while, what's the plan for navigating this downturn? Michael straightened in his chair, shifting into the problem-solving mode I recognized from his youth. Short term, we've cut all non-essential expenses. Longer term, I'm refocusing on our core services where we have the strongest reputation. We expanded too quickly into areas where we didn't have a solid track record. Sounds sensible, I approved. Playing to your strengths. I'm also considering downsizing the office space, he continued. The new location was a statement. Premium downtown address, views of the river, all that. But we're barely using half the square footage now, and the lease is killing us. Can you sublet part of it? Working on that? He nodded. There's a graphic design firm interested in taking the corner suite. He hesitated. And I've been thinking about the house too. This surprised me. Downsizing your home? Not necessarily, he clarified. But being smarter about it. The property taxes and maintenance costs are significant. We could refinance, maybe rent out the finished basement as a short-term rental. Portland has a strong vacation rental market. I considered these options, impressed by his practical approach. The Michael of 3 weeks ago, insisting on his financial independence while redirecting me to the guest bathroom, seemed far removed from this more grounded version sitting beside me now. These all sound like reasonable strategies, I said. None of them drastic, all of them potentially effective. He smiled ruefully. Thanks for not saying I told you so about the expansion being too aggressive. Did I say that? I couldn't recall offering such specific advice about his business growth. Not in those words, he admitted. But last year, when I was telling you about the new office and the additional staff we were hiring, you asked if the Miller account was secure enough to build that much infrastructure around it. I brushed it off at the time, but you were right to question it. I vaguely remembered the conversation, a phone call where Michael had enthusiastically outlined his expansion plans. I had indeed expressed some caution, drawing on my own experience, with organizations that grew too quickly and then struggled to maintain their new size when conditions changed. Hindsight is always clearer, I offered. You made the best decisions you could with the information you had at the time. Maybe, he conceded, but I also wasn't listening as carefully as I could have been. To you, to some of my more conservative advisors. He shook his head. Elise and I got caught up in a certain image of success. The house, the office, the lifestyle. It all seemed to validate the risks we were taking. This level of self-reflection was new, at least in our conversations. Michael had always been confident, sometimes to the point of stubbornness. Hearing him acknowledge missteps and missed wisdom represented a significant shift. "Everyone makes mistakes," I said. "The crucial thing is how you respond to them." "That's where I could use your input," he said, facing me directly now. "Not just about fixing the deck or the cabinet hinges, but about navigating the whole situation. How to reset our priorities, how to talk to the kids about changes, how to, I don't know, find our footing again." The request touched me deeply. Not a request for money, but for something far more valuable: experience, perspective, wisdom. The very things I had most wanted to offer when I felt sidelined during my previous visit. "I'm happy to help however I can," I said simply. "That's what fathers are for." He nodded, a weight visibly lifting from his shoulders. "Thanks, Dad." Inside the house, lights were switching off as Elise prepared for bed. Through the kitchen window, I could see her moving efficiently through her nighttime routine. Checking the back door, adjusting the thermostat, switching off the remaining lamps. The carefully curated appearance of my last visit had given way to a more authentic, if slightly harried, reality. "We should probably turn in," Michael suggested, gathering our empty bottles. "Early start tomorrow with the twins' birthday preparations." "Before we do," I said, reaching a decision that had been forming throughout our conversation. "There's something I want to discuss with you." He paused, looking at me expectantly. "I've been thinking about setting up a small emergency fund for your family," I began, choosing my words carefully. "Not to interfere with your independence or suggest you can't handle this situation, but as a backup, a safety net that's there if you truly need it." Michael started to protest, but I held up a hand to continue. "Let me finish. This wouldn't be like the mortgage payments, not an ongoing commitment or a bailout. Just a reserve that sits untouched unless there's a genuine emergency. Medical bills, urgent home repairs, that kind of thing." "Dad, we're okay," he insisted, though with less conviction than he might have shown a few weeks earlier. "We're adjusting our expenses, making changes. We'll weather this." "I believe you will," I assured him. "This isn't about doubt. It's about peace of mind, for all of us. I sleep better knowing you have a safety margin, and you might make better business decisions knowing there's a buffer for your family if things get worse before they get better." He was quiet for a moment, considering. "I appreciate the offer," he finally said, "but I need to think about it. Talk it over with Elise." "Of course," I agreed, relieved he hadn't rejected the idea outright. No pressure, no timeline, just something to consider. We made our way inside, locking the back door and turning off the remaining lights. As we headed to our respective bedrooms, Michael paused in the hallway. "Hey, Dad." "Thank you. For the deck. For Fort Awesome. For—" He gestured vaguely, encompassing our conversation. "Everything, really." "You're welcome," I replied simply. "Get some sleep. We have a busy day tomorrow." Morning arrived with the organized chaos of birthday preparations. The twins were up at dawn, too excited to sleep, despite the actual party being scheduled for the afternoon. Elise was in full planning mode, checking items off lists and directing traffic while Michael assembled the new bicycles that were their main gift, a purchase made months ago, before the business downturn. I found my role naturally, helping with the practical aspects, setting up folding tables in the backyard, arranging chairs, hanging streamers from the newly repaired deck railing. The weather cooperated beautifully, providing sunshine and mild temperatures perfect for an outdoor celebration. "The cake delivery is late," Elise announced around 11, a note of stress in her voice. They promised between 10 and 11. "Is it from that fancy bakery across town?" I asked, remembering the elaborate confections that had been served during my previous visit. "No," she admitted, looking slightly embarrassed. "Just the local grocery store. We had to cancel the custom. One from Emily's." "The twins won't know the difference," I assured her. "And if it doesn't show up, we can always make one." She looked horrified at the suggestion. From a box? For their birthday? They'd probably love it, I said with a smile. Being part of the process, getting to lick the beaters. Some of my best memories with Michael and Laura involve box cake mix and too much frosting. Elise seemed unconvinced, but didn't dismiss the idea outright. Another small sign of shifting priorities. Let's give the delivery another half hour before we panic. The cake arrived just in time. A simple sheet cake with Happy 9th Birthday Emma and Jack written in blue frosting. It lacked the artistic flourishes and fondant sculptures of previous celebrations, but when the twins saw it, their excitement was undiminished. "It has our names on it!" Emma exclaimed, as if this were a revolutionary concept. "And sprinkles," Jack added, equally impressed. The party itself was smaller than previous years. Just 6 friends from school, the next-door neighbors, and a couple of Elise's relatives who lived nearby. No hired entertainment, no elaborate themed decorations, no professional photographer capturing every moment. Instead, Michael manned the grill. I supervised games in the yard, and Elise circulated with a plastic camera, taking candid shots of laughing children. For all its simplicity, or perhaps because of it, the celebration felt more genuine than the carefully orchestrated events I had witnessed in the past. The children played with uncomplicated joy, racing through the yard, taking turns on the new bicycles, and repeatedly visiting Fort Awesome, which had been enhanced with birthday balloons and declared the official present opening headquarters. During a quiet moment as the party wound down and the last of the young guests were being collected by their parents, I found myself sitting with Emma on the deck steps. She was carefully arranging her birthday gifts, a set of watercolor paints, new books, a science kit, into neat piles. "Did you have a good birthday?" I asked, watching her methodical sorting. "The best," she declared without hesitation. "Especially the fort. None of my friends have a fort like that." "I'm glad you like it," I said, warmed by her enthusiasm. "It was fun to build it with you and Jack." She looked up at me, her expression suddenly serious. "Grandpa, are we poor now?" The question caught me off guard. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart?" "I heard Mom and Dad talking about money," she explained. "And we didn't get the fancy cake this year, and Mom said I have to wait until Christmas for the American Girl doll I wanted." I considered how to respond, knowing this was a formative conversation for her understanding of money and security. "You're not poor," I said carefully. "Your parents are being more careful with money right now because Dad's business is going through some changes. It means making choices about what's really important," she nodded solemnly. "Like Fort Awesome instead of the fancy cake." "Exactly," I agreed, impressed by her comprehension. "Some things cost a lot of money but don't last very long, like an expensive cake. Other things might cost less but create better memories, like building the fort together." "I like the fort better than the cake anyway," she declared. "The cake is already gone, but the fort is still there." Out of the mouths of babes, I thought, smiling at her simple wisdom. "That's a pretty smart way of looking at it. Dad said you helped us when we didn't have enough money before," she continued, surprising me again with her awareness. "When we were little." "That's what families do," I explained. "We help each other when needed." "Like you fixing the deck," she observed. Just like that. She seemed satisfied with this explanation, returning to the organization of her gifts. "I'm going to put the watercolors in the fort," she decided. "It can be my art studio." "Excellent choice," I approved. "Every fort needs an art studio." Later, that evening, after the excitement had finally wound down and the twins were in bed with their new treasures, the adults gathered in the kitchen for a post-celebration debrief. Elise was removing leftover food from serving platters. Michael was breaking down cardboard gift boxes for recycling, and I was washing the dishes that wouldn't fit in the dishwasher. "That went well," Elise said, sounding relieved. Better than I expected, honestly. The kids had a blast, Michael agreed. Simpler than last year, but maybe better because of it. Sometimes less is more, I offered, scrubbing at a particularly stubborn frosting stain. Emma said it was her best birthday ever, Elise revealed. Even without the unicorn performer or the custom cake or the designer party favors. She shook her head, seemingly amazed. All because of that fort in the backyard. The fort is pretty epic, Michael acknowledged with a grin in my direction. Dad's structural engineering made all the difference. I think what made the difference was the three of us building it together, I suggested. That's what the twins will remember, not the fancy lights or the design, but the fact that we all participated in creating it. Elise paused in her container filling. You know, Robert, you might be right. When I think about my own childhood birthday parties, what stands out isn't the gifts or decorations, but the activities we did together as a family. This admission from Elise, who had previously seemed so invested in creating picture-perfect experiences, indicated another shift in perspective. The financial downturn had forced a reevaluation of priorities, revealing unexpected benefits in the process. I've been thinking about your emergency fund idea, Michael said suddenly, changing the subject as he flattened another gift box. Elise and I discussed it last night. I glanced up from the sink, careful to keep my expression neutral. And? We appreciate the offer, he said, meeting my eyes directly. And we'd like to accept it, with some conditions. This was not the response I had expected. During our porch conversation, I had sensed his reluctance to accept financial help, even in the form of an emergency reserve. What conditions? I asked, genuinely curious. First, we want it to be structured as a loan, not a gift, he explained. With proper documentation and a repayment plan once we're back on stable footing. Elise nodded in agreement. Second, it's strictly for genuine emergencies. Medical issues, critical home repairs, that sort of thing. Not for maintaining our lifestyle or covering regular expenses. And third, Michael continued, we want to be completely transparent with you about our finances, monthly updates on the business situation, our progress on cutting expenses, rebuilding savings, that kind of thing. Their proposal was thoughtful and mature, acknowledging both the reality of their situation and the importance of maintaining boundaries and responsibility. Those all sound reasonable, I said, drying my hands on a dish towel. I'm glad you're open to the idea. We've learned some things these past few weeks, Michael said with a rueful smile. About pride, about priorities, about bathrooms. Elise winced slightly at the bathroom reference but didn't object. We got caught up in appearances, she admitted, trying to project success rather than building true security. She looked at me directly, something she rarely did in our previous interactions. I owe you an apology, Robert. Not just for the bathroom situation, but for taking your support for granted all these years. For acting like the help you provided was just expected, rather than the generous gift it was. The acknowledgement caught me off guard. In all our discussions about the mortgage payments, Elise had remained largely in the background, leaving the financial conversations to Michael. I appreciate that, I said simply, not wanting to belabor the point now that it had been recognized. We both do, Michael added, and we want you to know that regardless of the emergency fund or financial arrangements, you'll always have a place in our home, not as a guest, but as family, complete with bathroom privileges, he added with a smile. The joke broke the tension, allowing all of us to laugh at what had become a symbolic issue far beyond its practical significance. As I prepared for bed that night, using the downstairs bathroom that had once been off-limits, I reflected on the transformations of the past few weeks. Financial setbacks had created an opening for more authentic connections. A construction project and a birthday fort had rebuilt not just physical structures, but family bonds. And the bathroom, That simple, practical space that had become loaded with so much meaning had been restored as a shared territory, a small but significant marker of my place within the family. Tomorrow I would drive back to Seattle, returning to my quiet house and regular routines. But I would do so with a renewed sense of connection to my son's family, and with the knowledge that relationships like houses require regular maintenance and occasional renovation to remain strong and functional. The guest bathroom incident, which had initially seemed like a painful rejection, had ultimately opened the door to a more honest assessment of our family dynamics, and perhaps to a more authentic relationship moving forward. The drive back to Seattle gave me time to reflect. As I navigated the familiar highway, I realized how much had changed in just a few days. What began as a weekend defined by the awkwardness of being relegated to a guest bathroom had transformed into something unexpectedly healing. My hands still smelled faintly of wood stain from the deck repair, tangible evidence of my contribution beyond just financial support. When I arrived home, my neighbor Dave was collecting my mail as we had arranged. "Good visit?" he asked, handing me the small stack of envelopes. "Better than expected," I replied. "Fixed a deck, built a fort, had some good conversations." "Sounds like you were busy," he observed with a smile. "More handyman than houseguest." "Exactly," I said, realizing how perfectly he had captured the shift. And it felt right. Over the next few weeks, Michael kept his promise about transparency, sending me weekly updates on the business situation. They weren't always positive. Another small client had decided not to renew their contract, and negotiations with the graphic design firm interested in subletting office space were proceeding slowly. But there were bright spots too. A former client had returned with a modest project, and Elise's wellness coaching business was steadily growing as she focused more attention on it. Most surprising were the occasional texts and photos from Elise herself, snapshots of the twins playing in Fort Awesome, which remained standing in the backyard far longer than I had expected. Pictures of Emma's completed art projects created in her studio corner of the fort. Updates on the deck railing, which was holding strong despite Jack's attempts to use it as a balance beam. The emergency fund was established with proper documentation, as Michael had insisted. I transferred $15,000 to a separate account they could access if truly needed, with clear guidelines about what constituted an emergency. So far, they hadn't touched it, a fact Michael mentioned with quiet pride during our regular Sunday calls. 1. Evening in late June, my daughter Laura called while I was grilling on the back patio. "So," she said after we had caught up on her family news, "I talked to Michael yesterday." "Oh?" I tried to sound casual, though I suspected what was coming. "He told me about the business situation," she continued, "and about how you helped with the deck and building that epic fort for the twins. He also mentioned something interesting about bathroom privileges being restored." I chuckled. "Did he explain the whole bathroom saga?" "In detail," she confirmed, amusement in her voice. "Including how they initially banished you upstairs when they were playing fancy house, then suddenly rediscovered your value when they needed home repairs." "That's a bit harsh," I protested mildly. "But accurate," Laura insisted. "The interesting thing is how openly he talked about getting caught up in appearances, taking your support for granted, all of it. That's not the brother I remember. He was always so defensive about criticism." She was right. Michael had traditionally been quick to justify his actions, rarely acknowledging missteps or oversights. This new self-awareness represented significant growth. "Financial setbacks have a way of clarifying priorities," I observed. "Still," Laura pressed, "it bothers me that it took a business downturn for them to treat you with proper respect." "The guest bathroom thing really gets under my skin. It's resolved now," I assured her. "Water under the bridge." "Maybe," she conceded reluctantly. "But I'm still coming to visit you next month, and you better believe I'll be having words with my Big Brother about how to treat the father who kept his house from foreclosure. I smiled at her protective instinct, but gently discouraged any confrontation. No need to dredge it up. We've reached a better understanding. After we hung up, I reflected on Laura's reaction. Her indignation on my behalf was touching, if unnecessary. The bathroom incident, which had once felt like a painful rejection, now seemed more like a necessary catalyst. The small earthquake that had exposed fault lines in our relationship, allowing us to address the deeper issues beneath. In July, I drove down to Portland again for a weekend visit. This time there was no awkwardness upon arrival, no careful directing toward guest spaces. Michael met me at the door with a genuine embrace, and the twins practically tackled me with excitement. "Dad, we put you in the downstairs room again," Michael said casually. "Hope that works?" "Perfect," I replied, appreciating the normality of the arrangement. The house itself had changed subtly. The pristine showcase quality had softened around the edges. Family photos had replaced some of the abstract artwork, toys were visible in corners rather than hidden away, and the kitchen had reverted to functional rather than ornamental status. It felt like a home again, lived in, slightly imperfect, genuinely welcoming. During this visit, there were no repairs to make, no projects requiring my expertise. Instead, we simply enjoyed family time, a hike in the nearby state park, board games that became increasingly competitive as the evening wore on, impromptu ice cream sundaes assembled at the kitchen counter with the twins acting as enthusiastic servers. On Saturday night, after the children were in bed, Elise surprised me by joining Michael and me on the back deck with her own beer, a departure from her previous preference for selected wines. "We wanted to share some news," Michael said, glancing at Elise. "Two pieces, actually." "We're officially downsizing the office space," Elise explained. "The graphic design firm signed the sublease yesterday. It reduces our overhead by almost 40%. "That's excellent," I said, genuinely pleased. "Smart business move." "The second piece is more personal," Michael continued. "We've decided to put Emma and Jack in public school next year." This was significant. The private school they attended was prestigious and expensive, a cornerstone of the carefully curated life they had constructed. "It's partly financial," Elise admitted, "but also philosophical. We've been talking about what values we're truly communicating to the kids. The emphasis on exclusivity, on having the best of everything." She shook her head. "It doesn't align with what we want them to learn about life." "The local public school has an excellent program," Michael added, "and more diverse classmates economically and culturally. We think that's valuable." I nodded, impressed by their thoughtfulness. "It sounds like you're making decisions based on substance rather than appearance. That's a positive shift." "We have you to thank in part," Elise said unexpectedly. "Watching you with the twins during the birthday weekend, how you engaged with them so authentically, without any of the extras we thought were necessary. It made me realize how much simpler things could be, and how much happier we all might be with less pressure to maintain appearances." The acknowledgement touched me deeply. Not because I needed credit, but because it represented a genuine connection with my daughter-in-law that had previously been cordial, but distant. Later that night, as I prepared for bed in the downstairs room that had once again become simply my room rather than designated guest quarters, I noticed something new on the nightstand. A framed photograph of 4 generations. My father holding newborn Michael, me beside them with my arm around my father's shoulders. It was a picture I had almost forgotten existed, certainly one that had never been displayed in Michael's home before. Beside it lay a small notebook, the kind I had carried for years to track household expenses when Michael and Laura were growing up. Inside, in my son's handwriting, was a simple message. "Some traditions worth keeping. Thanks for teaching me what truly matters." I closed the notebook, emotion tightening my throat. The guest bathroom saga had come full circle, evolving from a painful symbol of relegation to the catalyst for a more authentic relationship. One where I was valued not just for what I could provide financially, but for the wisdom, perspective, and love that formed my true legacy. The next morning, I used the main bathroom without comment or hesitation. No special dispensation, no careful boundaries, just the natural, unremarkable inclusion that defines true family belonging. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.